We got Venus for a little. We'll check over to the moon. Get started with the jams. What's up there, Kimmy? And everybody just join in. Hope you'll have had a great day. It's gonna be a fun one tonight. Let's start off strong. It's alright. What up? Rune, Thorson, and Bearer of Wisdom. What's happening? So, quick shot at Saturn, which is also setting right above Venus. And now we got the moon, which is still sort of slightly southwest for me, and actually getting pretty high up there. So scope is at a pretty steep angle right now. Let's see what the altitude of the moon is. It's a 56 rather, percent illuminated waxing gibbous today. So across the halfway mark. And it's up at Yeah, about 54 degrees altitude. That's pretty high up. So focus is going to be going in and out due to atmospherics. Plus it's still chilly. It looks real nice. Just over half. And we'll see it's creeping into Oceanus Procellarum or Mare Imbrium up at the top. We can fully see Serenity, Tranquility tonight. And the whole mountain range starting to come through, the Apennines. And then you got the really cool chain of craters at the bottom with, yeah, we'll go into detail, but really good stuff tonight. A whole series of hexagonal craters with Ptolemaeus and Alphonsus. I think Clavius is coming up too, right on the cusp. It's gonna be fun. I see how that can work, but the mirror is built into the equipment, right? I mean, it's not bothering the view, but it does look quite pixeled, hence the question. Well, it's one of those things that the curvature of the lens basically starts diffracting so hard, so it starts looking blurry. But the center of the lens, you can see that's why I constantly keep the moon centered or the planets. That's the sharpest point at the very, very center of the lens. It's a lot like our actual eyes. Hey, what's up, Ellie Wynn? Evening to you as well. If you're talking about the out-of-focus stars, that's a different thing. And maybe I'll show it a little bit later when it gets dark, because that's actually atmospheric turbulence, or recently I was looking at magnetospheric turbulence, and you know, maybe that's what we're seeing as well, because it's starlight coming through, just perturbing the ether and then our magnetosphere, and so potentially we're seeing those waves as well. Well, when it gets darker, it's much less noticeable as well. So when it's bright out, you see the fall off because of the light. Here you don't really see the gradation unless I really turn up the settings. So remember, speaking of settings, turn up to 4K if you can, and let me know if the audio and video is looking good, sounding good, and share it with a friend if you like. I'm gonna run for like an hour and a half tonight till around 8, and then I gotta hit some dinner, but we'll still see a bit more Venus and definitely some Saturn. Oh, you eating beans, Ellie? I had some beans yesterday, pretty good, but like I had them like mashed into a tortilla. It's pretty good. I'm doing okay. Yeah, not too bad today. Still alive, we are. Yeah, it's still pretty, even right now it's still pretty bright out. It's not blue anymore, but it just set, so yeah. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm drinking cold coffee in the freezing evening, but I'll toast y'all. All right. What's up there, David? Electric Universe Eyes. Welcome, my man. Hope you're doing well. On the long road to Houston again. Good times to soothe my soul. Oh, good tunes. Thank you. All right. So let's do more tunes, but I just want to take the opportunity to say what's up and thanks for hanging out. And also, back here with a quick shot of Venus. So it's so important to pay attention to Venus. It's one of the big clues in terms of what's going on with our solar system and the age of the solar system. It's really not talked about as, I want to say importantly, as much as other bodies in the solar system. We tend to hear about Mars quite often, but really Venus is very, very important. I would also say Uranus, and probably Saturn and Jupiter, but those are also, Uranus is definitely not talked about, nor is Neptune, both of which are very important. However, anyway, quick shot about Venus. I just want to see if I can read something pertinent to Venus. Typing in Venus, Velikovsky. Essentially, Velikovsky proposed that Venus was actually a comet, so not a planet necessarily. And this could have been still the case. This could still be the case. So Venus could still be a comet that has just chilled out a little bit. And Velikovsky was essentially proven right in this instance because he predicted it 10 years before. I'm blanking on the mission. Let me see. Venus, Velikovsky, and I'm losing the view too. Let me just set this up right. So right here, getting tons of diffraction spikes. This is because it's right behind the palm trees right now. So if you have any object in front of the light of the camera, you're gonna get these spikes. Looks very cool, but Venus is not flaring up that badly. Not just yet, or not since. Let's see, what up, Jonas? Welcome. So Electric Universe Eye says, Mother Goddess, Lucifer, Quetzalcoatl, good and evil, duality. I'd add to that the morning star, Ishtar, Inanna, and the comet, Venus. Let's see. It is insane myself. Hold on. Okay, so Velikovsky. I know that this is just reading off of certain articles. I should have been better prepped, but it seems relevant because seeing Venus is not a common occurrence, let alone seeing Venus close up. So let's see. I mean, I could just say it from memory, screw reading it. Essentially, Velikovsky proposes that Venus is one of many comets that appeared to Earth, but one of the most prominent ones since we still see it, and that it's very young, and that the surface is volatile, and that in the near past, from like maybe up to about 800 or 1,000 years ago, maybe 1,500 years ago, and then prior to that, about 10,000 to 20,000 years, that Venus was part of a planetary catastrophe that brought on plagues and possibly modified human DNA, and essentially Venus being the replacement for all the stories you've heard about for ancient aliens or ancient human archetypes. These were probably celestial bodies and celestial events like comets, planets, meteors, asteroids, plasma clouds, nebula, and you name it, things that are basically cosmic biology. And so Venus, now that we can really talk about it and see it, Venus glows super brightly. It's almost incandescent. NASA sent a craft there, landed really, and found that the surface was not what they expected. It's one of those particular stories where you hear on Thunderbolts, like scientists baffled by surface of Venus. But the reason they were baffled is because pop mainstream scientism thinks that, or proposes that Venus exists, comes from an early part of the solar system of the, and it's aged over billions of years. And so it should have been basically a dead world. And when they landed, let me see, find the name of the craft. So it's not Voyager, it's, I should really know, NASA mission. It was the Pioneer. And I guess NASA Mercury Orbiter was Messenger, Venus was the Parker Solar Probe, multiple Venus flybys. There's a Venus Express Orbiter. So there have been several missions, but I think the one I'm thinking of is Pioneer. So Pioneer went to Venus. The Pioneer Venus Orbiter, Venus 1, was a mission to Venus conducted by the States as part of the Pioneer Venus project. Launched in May of '78 atop an Atlas Centaur rocket, the spacecraft was inserted into elliptical orbit around Venus December 4th. That's crazy, that's today. How weird. 1978. So if my math is not, let's see, what is that? It's 19 and 22, that is 41. So 41 years to the day, this craft Pioneer was inserted into Venus's orbit, sounds dirty, and took these pictures of Venus that proved that scientists' predictions within the Big Bang cosmology were actually off, and Immanuel Velikovsky was pretty much proven right. This is shown in the documentary Bonds of the Past. Let me link y'all to that. So if I'm articulating it poorly, please watch this video. Yeah. And this really throws everything for a loop, because if Venus is young and volatile and a comet, and we can study it in that kind of detail, then we can study how really this universe came into existence, or the solar system at least, because you have to reconcile the fact that planets might not be that old. And that's really a big deal. Like how recently did Mars' surface change? Or how recently did Earth become habitable? There's this idea that the panspermia idea, but maybe just Earth evolved into a very particularly detailed fractal zone where humans could emerge, or the magnitudes of life could pinch into existence. Earth could be a very particular example, or it could be, just the one playground that this consciousness can observe because of the gradient fall off of plasma bubbles. So it's probably worth noting Venus today. And yeah, that's what I got, a little bit of Venus. Yo, what's going on, Mark Rowe? What up, y'all? Just started a fire in the pit. Fire in the hole, fire in the pit, and going with the flow, really. Yeah, no need to prep when it's so simple. I always get hung up on it, but I'm like, now that I understand the conjugate field geometry, the torus and the hourglass shape, then you understand that everything is a modality of the conscious electric or dielectric or dark matter or ether field, and you got these vibrations that turn into all the things that we see, and they turn into it along the field geometry that we see. And consciousness emerges at every point, at every magnitude, within a gradiated fall off of its influence and conscious acceptability, permittivity and permeability and permissivity. So basically on and off. And it really doesn't rob excitement from the human experience or consciousness. It actually makes it much more interesting that it's smart. Oh man, I can't even muster a chuckle, Mark. Sorry. It's hard, man. Like, there's so many things that have been just mired in humor or cynicism or quips that there's really not much left for science. Even, honestly, man, I don't know who watches the Marvel stuff, but like the quippiness in those movies is so boring. It really undercuts any emotional notes or any deaths or any like value to any of the consequences in those movies when they quip so inanely. I don't know. It's ruined the experience. Almost all movies do that now. They think they're being cool, but it's like SNL C-roll. All right, I'm pretty harsh. Consciousness plus coffee. Oh yeah. Quick shout out to list of Electric Universe peoples, including my man David in the chat. Electric Universe Eyes doing electric arcing in a laboratory, unlike showing impact craters in a laboratory with ballistics. People like David and Billy Yelverton and Dive Fly Fish and Electro Terra Vision and a bunch of other people have done electric discharge in a laboratory, along with CJ Ransom. Of course, Sapphire Project is a little bit different, but essentially the tip of Sapphire Project, the anode, looks like a fingerprint and it looks like cymatics. It's essentially distributed cellular diffusion noise following the conjugate field geometry of hyperboloids and toruses and forming essentially the strongest forms in nature, at first a sphere and then hexagons and platonics. So simple and straightforward, just so difficult to conceive of because, you know, the common paradigm is really seductive. But science really shouldn't necessarily need seduction. It should be in and of itself wondrous and entertaining and sticky. All right, limeritas, all right, and s'mores. I like the s'mores part. All right, so that's a little bit of Venus. Let's check out Saturn for a moment, and we'll get back to the moon. Everything made up of shells.
Made up of shells, swirl like the storm, cause of the light, you are the door. Made up of shells, I love the storm, cause of the love, you are my light. Made up of shells, magnetic light, claws of the force, gracefully made up of shells.
shells.
Made out of shells.
So my songs are sometimes really on the nose, but I just thought it sounded like it had grandeur. when you really consider things like onion shells and onion skins and these concepts we have like sphere of influence or aura, these things make a lot of sense in the physical manifestation. Oh, what up there, Kronos? How's it going, bro? What up, Sue Hill and Miguel? Also, what up? So quick shot here of the Saturnian system, or Kronos, rather. It's so funny. I never thought, in 2018, 2019, that people would be using terminology like Kronos and spelling it correctly. Nor would I have thought that I'd be looking at Saturn or the Saturnian system so closely and sharing it with the world. What up, what up? Fish and Farm. Cool name. Alright, so I want to zoom in here real quick because we can see some of the moons. Of course, Titan is the brightest, but we can see Rhea, Dione, and Tethys as well as Eyepieces very faintly. See, this is still the wide shot though, the widest lens that I have. But the reason I haven't changed it is because seeing the moon at first, you kind of want to get that wide shot, and then switching it is kind of a pain. So it's not a pain, it takes like a second to learn how to regulate my language a little bit. It's tough, like when you say things like, oh, it's such a pain in the ass. Oh man, it takes so long. But you could also say, man, that's really cool. And then it doesn't feel so stressed out anymore. But you gotta practice doing that. Anyway, so we got some Kronos in view. I'm gonna zoom in, even though it is the wide shot, and we can take a look. That's zoomed in just a little bit on the camera, and you can see what's particular. Titan is always this bright, so that's the 2 o'clock top right position. But the bottom right position near the 5 o'clock, that is actually, is it, 1 second? Yeah, it's the moon Rhea, A-R-H-E-A, and it typically is much closer to Saturn. I've never really seen it this, I guess, at this position, this far away and this bright. So it's a nice conjunction, Titan, Rhea, and then you got, let's see, what is this? Tethys and Dione hanging out together at the very top of Saturn. It's hard to see them, but if you can make out the little dot, that's Dione and Tethys. And then Eyepieces is down here. And there are a couple of stars as well. All right, so what can I share about Saturn? Saturn has a lot of different stories. Originally, when I first got into Thunderbolts Project and Velikovsky, there's this idea that Saturn is at the root of it all, where Saturn birthed a comet it was a brown dwarf. Actually, this tune is a little too energetic for what I'm about to talk about. Hold on, let's find the right type of background. And I'm sure Kronos and David and everyone else will have their opinions and thoughts, so please feel free to share. This is just my thoughts. But anyway, when I first got into Thunderbolts and Velikovsky, it's like Saturn was the root, and it was a brown dwarf, so that was essentially where Saturn got its rings. That's what people think. They're like, oh my god, Saturn has rings. Like, where did it get its rings from? So that was one of my big questions. And when you consider that, oh, there are these things called brown dwarves, which are essentially like celestial versions of atoms. And if you want to envision an atom, it's basically a tiny node point with a shell, or multiple shells, but like a certain density of a shell, you're going to start seeing that shell. So Saturn had no rings, and then it had the shell, and Earth, let's say, I think, the first story, I'm just recounting what I first understood, is that Earth and Mars were kind of sister planets inside the sheath of Saturn, and something tore through our solar system. Now I know differently, but I'm just recounting the story, and disturbed this, exploding the sheath and creating these rings. Earth was able to, the inhabitants of Earth were able to see the stars for the first time in our solar system, in our galaxy, and also see, I guess, the moon and maybe other planets like Mars. So that was the first kind of story, and I was like, man, that's an amazing story. Things make a lot more sense, like, as opposed to things haven't moved in a billion years or tens of billions of years. So a volatile, moving solar system, perhaps a solar system where Earth had different gravity and different physics than we know now. And so when I got to the point where I'm like, oh shit, like physics is one of those things that seems so fundamental that, and we've been told, or we've been sold to by a certain conglomerate of people, that physics is, must be upheld, that you can't really change things, things are fixed, there are laws, there's the speed of light, there's the sound barrier, there's the early seconds of the Big Bang. There are all these metrics, like the dicing up of property and sections of meat of the universe that we live in, that it makes it very difficult to come up with new ideas and think about new approaches to physics and cosmology, cosmogony, astronomy, astrophysics, astrobiology, geology, cosmic geology, and history of time, history of man, DNA, panspermia, you name it. There are tons of concepts in here on top of calculus, trigonometry, geometry, and the title of this video, did I put it? No. I put the thumbnail, lunar geomancy. And geomancy is deriving understanding from essentially geometry, or our surrounding, it's more catered to this kind of magical, alchemical practice that people used to derive, soothsaying or telling the future based on certain types of cards or certain types of geometric objects and symbols. However, for me, it's more about looking at the moon through new eyes and understanding that there's a sense of wonder to the moon that doesn't include, it doesn't need aliens, and it doesn't need the Apollo conspiracy, and it doesn't need, it just doesn't need anything beyond the fact that it's the moon. And so for me, the same thing, Saturn has now taken on this new meaning. It's no longer this quest to conquer Saturn, or the nostalgia of the Cassini missions or flag pins. It's more about, was Saturn our home planet to Earth? So that becomes way more exciting to me. And then, I've heard, of course, all the things like the Merkaba, or no, what is it, the black cube concept, David Icke, and how Saturn generates, all these signals, and the moon amplifies them and changes reality for humans, and we're on prison planet. But in a way, David Icke is caught up in salvationism as well. He kind of just wants to save people. You know, you don't have to do that. People say you can, but it seems like this life has all sorts of different ventures. You can choose to save the world, you can choose to destroy the world. Who judges, who decides which is more valid? Now, does one side try and stop the other? Certainly. But this idea of ethics and morality and like what's right and wrong is really subjective, and also depends on where we are in space and time and what this all is. So there's no perfect answer to things. And I think science now has become so religious because they want to find these absolutes, these diamond absolutes. They do it in movies too. The rhetoric in Marvel movies and DC movies is so, it reminds me so much of Carl Sagan and the way they used very glossy, and I mean producers on TV shows coupled with analysts from certain government agencies creating documents that are released in the media and then regurgitated throughout the years by different people who don't do enough research. So originally these types of propaganda about how we're so insignificant, we're looking into the past, we're made of star stuff. These are these things called, to me, that I have realized are things called poetic platitudes or purple prose. To quote, is it Donald Scott? Or one of the guys from Thunderbolts Project, maybe Montgomery or somebody, just mentioned this thing called purple prose, and I find it perfect descriptions of these anecdotal, nostalgic ways of describing space and science instead of granular, detailed, specific ways to describe space and science. And people have a hankering right now for that detail. And I think this kind of vague, oh, you're made of star stuff, is really boring. And we're grown along filamentary networks with plasma and Z-pinches and conjugate geometry. And this is how it works, and we're all connected. Way more appealing as a physics and astrophysics, you name it. Kind of go down the list and you'll see, like, man, if you look at biology as cells that are electric, you look at thought as outside of the body in these shells of information, you can reconcile the giant spy, which is ultimately that it's experiential because you are the Godhead and you're the most evil thing and the best thing at the same time in this. And it's not 50-50 either. It's always tipping one side to the next, but it never actually loses, but it also never actually wins. And I think brand marketing and propaganda really hinges on winning and losing as being these ultimates. You must win, you must succeed. And then they have all these TV shows that show that, like, even if you succeed in money and fame, it's always a hollow victory. And I feel like, so why not learn from that and realize that those are not the values to strive for, and stop looking for a new home planet like exoplanet research or SETI or Mars or any of these programs. Like, why are those valuable and not expending money on, like, light rail trains and cleaner water, like simple things, keeping skies darker and not needing satellites because we already have telepathy? It's pretty ridiculous. So that's my rant for right now. I gotta take a little break because I'm sitting too long in one position. I also didn't breathe for the last 3.5 minutes. Let's see who joined. What up, Polly B? Aloha, amigo. What's going on? And yeah, cool. Just reading through here, but thanks for all the nice comments. Hope everybody's doing great. We got a little Saturn here. So the point was, Saturn is also really important, and these ideas that somehow aliens are more exciting than actual planets is something I really want to kind of work on and see how the language made us think things like that and how we can change it. Because while there could be aliens like Greys or avian blue aliens or people from Cygnus, isn't it more important to just acknowledge that there's already Saturn and there are no aliens right now that we know of on Saturn? And isn't that enough for the moment? Because I think for me it's already just like beyond, but that should be the baseline. There's like, I don't even know how this whole game of like, oh, we really need these, giant people or like the black cube, as opposed to, holy shit, there's a plasma sphere with rings that tells a story. And the story is this history that is corroborated by people who lived like 2,000 years ago, or 5,000 or 10, taking note, just like we're doing right now with their tools, their YouTube and their streaming and their chat room. Any number of people who've kept record, and we get to carry that torch, as opposed to rob and screw people over. We get to observe our reality in a really holistic way. Don't forget to breathe. All right. What up, Artilectium and 24/7? And we shall head on over to the moon, because I've been giving the planets a lot of attention. So yeah, Saturn, Kronos. I'll do one more shot of it later, I think. Back here at the moon, but man, the cold front and the altitude of what we're looking at, it's like 50 plus degrees. Moon's pretty high up there. Who was saying that? Mark Rowe, yeah. Like last month though, I did one where it was like 73 degrees. It was pretty much like vertical. But this is about 55, and yeah, pretty blurry. I think maybe I might make this one a short one, get dinner, and then try again a little bit later. I think last night, looking west, it was much clearer late. And it'll be out tonight till like at least 10, 11 o'clock, so maybe I'll do part 2. No, it's definitely going in and out of focus, Artilectium. If you check out some of my prior videos from warmer nights, you'll see how sharp it could be. There's nothing wrong with the focus, it's just, this is the airstream. Cold air mixing with hot air creates microturbulence, and it basically throws the focus in and out as the wavefront moves through. Yeah, the skies will improve, I think, later. It's right now just like that chill right after the sun sets. It's that first wave. Patience always pays off anyway. Ellie Wynn says, I like my plasma caffeinated. I like my caffeine plasminated. Right now, I just finished the last of my ice cold coffee, but man, drinking cold coffee on a freezing night is just pure madness. Moon madness. All right, so I was talking about the comet Venus and how Velikovsky was pretty much on the money, and how Venus could have created some catastrophes that we know on Earth, like fossilization, petrification. It could have created plagues, and not just Venus. Apparently, we were logging things like 10 to 15 comets in the sky or more up until, hundreds to maybe 1,000 years ago. And these comets really just are so energetic, and they have this massive plasma effect or electric effect on Earth. And depending on the physics of Earth, the attributes of Earth, depending on the charge and where we were and the size of Earth, because potentially things grow. Maybe Earth is constantly growing. Maybe the expansion of the universe is due to growth of these plasma spheres, which would look like expansion. But the problem with current day cosmology is that everything is an island. Space is basically empty and electrically inert. And I think this is pop mainstream. It's pop mainstream, not the music. I mean science mainstream, scientism. But really plasma. NASA has plasma laboratories. They put a plasma lab and a magnetometer on Voyager in the 70s. So NASA is highly aware of the electrical nature of space and the universe. I think it's just one of those things that is probably, I don't know, it is nefarious at this point, but it's also like, yeah, I mean, if it's nefarious, then it makes sense. Otherwise, you have to really think like there are people who just don't understand or put 2 and 2 together, or that the system is so hung up on like defunding people or firing people or screwing kids, or not screwing kids, but screwing students over who are trying to write papers about new physics ideas. If it's that bad globally, where we really can't get out of the mire that is contemporary astro-religio-cosmogony, it's really pseudo-babble. It's just the same as alien stuff, which is why you see Neil deGrasse Tyson on things like Ancient Aliens or right around Ancient Aliens. They're both the same content, which is there's some other force that's greater than you. You're disempowered. Believe in a superhero, or believe in a superhero that's never coming because you're worthless. That's what really all of media espouses. But it's the best way to sell to people. You can't blame them, right? They're trying to operate at highest efficiency margins. So businesses will tell you, have realized that selling to a docile, uninformed audience is the best way to sell. So they have to make people and content dumbed down. And then what happens is, once you own all the outlets, then you can say that, oh, it's in these outlets because people wanted it there. And then they throw the blame game, and so people think, oh, did I really want all this music? Oh, I guess I did, because it's everywhere, it's popular. And so popular reinforcement of popularity being success is what has made physics like just unintelligible online right now. Every single article that's published, that's seen by more than 100,000 people is basically nonsense physically. Let's see. And I say that sweepingly because it really is that, not because they don't tell truths about physics, and they also tell lies about physics, but that these articles are nonsense because the goals of these articles generally are to get more money and to make people feel more and more disempowered and disconnected. So generally speaking, all these, like from Veritasium to 2-Minute Physics to PBS to Joe Rogan, Gaia, even in a way, I gotta say, it's really tough to follow anybody nowadays because ultimately we live in the paradigm of the success being the criteria, and success is deemed popularity and money, instead of success being facts, evidence, justice, ethics, moderation, and care. It really is that. Even people who care about all those values or espouse those values still deem success popularity and money. So until you can hold that as a single thought and then put it on the shelf and then re-talk about, reopen the discussion on where we live and what the goals of space are, we can't really have a discussion about physics because, it's much more desirable to never reveal the answer because that's where the money's at. If you reveal the answer, then you have to move forward. Stagnancy and the trickle down of technology is good for business. But what's good for mankind, humankind, is advancements in physics, which will bring, funnily enough, amazing business opportunities, but to more people than maybe the corporations would like. So it's one of these things where intellectualism and understanding is more valuable now. Critical thinking is the most valued prize, followed by probably authenticity. Yo, what up? Norwegian Flavor and American Life videos. No, I made my own coffee today and I had it in the fridge, and then I actually happened to have ice too, so pretty lucky, although now it's all over. I'll throw some Bandcamp links. Thanks, man. Yo, yo. Thanks for all the kind words. Got this track, Golden, coming up, and it's gonna be loud, but it's tough, man. This type of viewing really is so, I want to say it's irritating, but I'm chill. But man, it's tough to see it go in and out of focus that drastically. It's like barely visible right now, and watch, it'll just clear up in a second. Maybe I just need some food. Alright, so I'm gonna let this one ride, everybody. Anna Maria, what's going on, says, interesting discourse, good music, and a beautiful moon. Thank you. There should be a lot more likes. Very kind of you to say. Thanks for stopping by. And thank you all for stopping by. And yeah, as long as it's clear, I'll be on later. Let's say 10 o'clock-ish. So in like 3 hours, 2.5 hours. Yeah, because this just makes me want to tear my hair out. It's tough not to be able to see all the details. So let the song play out, let the moon drift, and I'll say thank you and hope y'all have a good dinner as well. Get nice and cozy, and I'll catch up with you all in a little bit for part 2.